I'll make sure the recording has closed caption.
Doing that right now.
Thank you.
There you go. Captions are on. All right. Corbin,
Here.
Allie,
Here.
Casey,
Here. Here.
David. Oh, David is here, but I need to promote him to panelist. But he is here. Chris is absent. Adam,
Here.
Adrian is absent. Aaron is also absent. Sabrina. Don't see her here. Suen.
Here.
Matt,
Present.
Patty. Here. Bill,
Here.
Allison. Here. Samir. Samir here. Oh, he just joined.
I'm here now. This is David. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Sweet. Thank you.
And then Jessica has made a note that she will be here a little bit later.
Great. Can we just put in a record that Aaron, Adrian, as well as Chris are excused absent?
Yes.
Great. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. Any general announcements? All right, I would like to make a general announcement. I want to welcome on our 3 new board members. We have Allison, Bill, who is online, and Samir, who's also online. So welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And thank you for our continuing board members. Welcome back from recess. I hope you had a chance to enjoy our parks. And let's go ahead and move on. So the next order of business, and we do have quorum, the approval of June meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the
So
minutes?
moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great, we have a second from Matt. Any discussion? Great. All right, anybody, so all those who are in favor of approving the meeting minutes as they are, please say aye or raise your hand.
Hi.
Jill, let me know when you're ready.
For all board members, you must raise your hand or not.
All board members, please raise your hand.
Oh, sorry, my hand is raised.
We can't see you.
At home.
Chat says that the video function is turned off, so they can't turn on their videos. Just so you know. Are folks unable to turn on their video?
Yeah, it says
Able to.
off.
Yeah, Michelle controls us.
She didn't want to see us today.
Okay, I will try to figure that out while we're in the middle of our meeting.
Those who have,
We were all
that
shy
have
today.
physical hands up, you can go ahead and put it down. You're getting a little tired.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Do we have any abstentions, meaning that you were not here? So those abstentions may be some board members because they weren't actually sworn in at that time.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Also, Adam was not here in June, so Adam, I'm gonna mark you as abstained.
And are there any who are voting against our meeting minutes? It looks like we are good. Thank you so much. gonna go ahead and move forward with the director's report with Director Long.
Great, thank you. Welcome and welcome back. I hope everyone enjoyed having July off from Parks Board business. In true form, when you go on vacation, you return to a ton of work. So I think that's evidenced by the 84-page packet you received last week. So sorry, we continue to be busy. So while you all were on hiatus, of course, we've been in full swing. We have a few more weeks left of summer programming and camps, and our Youth Conservation Corps programs are wrapping up. And we have plans to share highlights and stats regarding that work, including youth workforce data at the October board meeting. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to touch on something that was in the news that some of you may have read about. We very unfortunately had to remove the very first heritage tree. It was damaged heavily during the January storms, and we ended up having to remove the entire tree. And there were many ideas that were floated by many people about how to save the tree, but the dangerous condition required that it be removed. And the team really just did a tremendous job. I was told it could take up to a week, but the city forester arranged for overtime and they were able to complete the full removal in 2 days. Because of Dutch elm disease, we're limited in how we can use the lumber, but we did get permission from the state to secure some of the wood, and we have to store it and preserve it in a particular way, quarantine it for a while. But we're thinking about how to creatively use the wood as a nod to the first heritage tree. So stay tuned on ideas on what that will look like. Also, while I'm sure if you were here, you dealt with the unseasonably warm weather that we received as well. And again, each year it becomes more and more evident that our aged and otherwise inadequate infrastructure is further strained with the heat, and we see failures. So we experienced air conditioning, fountain, and pool failures throughout the system, and even some that are subsisting even now. Montevilla Pool was out of service for several weeks at the beginning of the season, and Pier Pool will not reopen this summer. We had our aquatics maintenance mechanics working diligently with contractors on all of the issues, and we continue that work as we wrap up the season. We're having discussions about, of course, both addressing whatever is we find to be the issues at Pier, trying to get those done now and into the fall, as well as doing prep a little bit earlier in the summer in 2025 so that we can hopefully troubleshoot some of the areas. Just keep in mind, many of our pools are from the WPA era and they act like it. And so we've managed to make investments over the years, but certainly not fast enough to keep up with the aging. I'll just note that the aquatics program was able to reassign, relocate, and refund. So anyone who had swim lessons still had swim lessons, but just at different locations, unless they chose not to go to the other location, in which case we refunded their money. And we were able to reassign staff so that there was no loss of wages or work time. So I'm really grateful for them. Also wanted to just shout out our professional repair and maintenance services team. Really just above and beyond. They're our tradespeople. So our plumbers, electricians, and other mechanics, and they've just really stepped up and leaned in as we were having these failures as well. Speaking of Pier Pool, this evening, the Friends of Pier Pool are convening a meeting this evening. They've expressed concerns about the pool. And so Nancy Roth, who is our manager of aquatics and sports, will be attending to answer any questions that they might have regarding the pool and about the timeline of repairs to get the pool back into working order. Over the summer, Parks also hosted several park celebrations. Darcel 15 Plaza groundbreaking event was held on July 20th. I don't recall seeing board members there, but I apologize if I didn't. There was a lot of glitter and glitz as we had just a wonderful drag queen performances and rainbow colored sand instead of soil for the groundbreaking. So it was quite the affair. Very warm day, but it was a great event. Also, we Parks hosted a sort of a community day for Farragut Park's newly renovated playground. There's also a new basketball court and other amenity improvements. And we partnered with the Portland Parks Foundation on a community play day at Raymond Park. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm sure when Jessica does arrive, she'll include that in her report. Learn a little bit more about that. Also, I know that you received a lot of emails from us recently. I apologize for that. We try to keep it together, but I forwarded to the board some upcoming open houses that PG is hosting regarding the Harborton Reliability Project. I know Sue, you had asked whether or not there was a virtual option. I did not see one on the website. I think it's only in person. Also, I will be sending an update from our senior environmental planner on the project and sort of the parks perspective. And they have been meeting with PGE. My understanding is that their application still has not been deemed complete. So the process, I don't know if it necessarily elongates it or not, but it has not been deemed complete by Portland Permitting and Development. So more to come on that. We have a new equity manager who started as well. Her name is Amanda Manjarrez, sorry. She's not attending today, but I'm having conversations with Kelly Torres about how we can have her come to a future board meeting for everyone to meet her. I just want to remind folks that in the past, there was an equity manager that reported to me as a part of Portland Parks and Recreation. In our new form of government, our new organizational structure, Amanda is reporting to Kelly Torres in the Deputy City Administrator's office. So she will be doing equity work for the entire service area, not just parks. While we have the largest sort of component of the service area, and I'm certain that her work will that she'll be engaged in a lot of our work. We're not really quite sure what her roles and responsibilities are going to be, so we're working that out. And I know there was some back and forth about whether or not she would be attending the community engagement working group meeting later on this week, and I don't think she will be, but like I said, we're working out the details. Just a little bit about Amanda. She's originally from New Mexico. She's spearheaded numerous public policy initiatives and played a pivotal role in building statewide infrastructure to promote civic engagement as the chief strategist for the Center for Civic Policy that's based in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She relocated to Oregon in 2013, and she since then has been a driving force in supporting culturally specific and community-based organizations to grow their capacity to advocate for community identified priorities and racial justice initiatives at all levels of government. She has served in roles as the inaugural advocacy director for the Coalition of Communities of Color at the Latino Network, and most recently as the director of public policy and government affairs at Foundations for a Better Oregon. So we recruited a wonderful candidate, and we look forward to working with her. I am going to pause to see if there's any questions, and then I'm going to cede the rest of my time to Claudio to give a budget update, and then to Todd for a polling update. So we'll just pause for a second to see if there's any questions on my report or on my written report.
Just as a reminder, if you want to ask a question, you're gonna put your name card to the side. Please raise your hand if you're online. So it looks like we have Matt and then Sulen. Go ahead.
Thanks for the report. Just, I don't recall seeing an invite to the.
Sent it to
I
the
don't know
full
if that's
parks.
the case with other-
Yeah, I'll double check. Just sent it a couple of days ago and it was like the day before their first one, but they're having 2 other ones.
No, sorry, not the,
Oh.
sorry, that their cell grand opening, the ribbon cutting, I don't remember seeing.
Groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking, yeah.
Yeah, that comes through the community engagement and comms team. So
We'll make sure.
we'll just make sure that,
Anything else?
Yep.
Yeah, so I do remember your comment earlier about us showing up, so I don't remember seeing that, you know.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll find out.
Sue-Ann, go ahead, please.
The summer events were amazing, and I was at the Sheila E. Amazing festival, with a musician. But there was a neighbor who actually approached me. I wasn't dressed as a parks person. I was just parked in front of her house, and she was very displeased because all these performances are blasting at the neighborhood and there's nothing they can do and then glass is rattling. I said, well, you should voice up. She said she actually wrote letters to us and there's no response. But it got me thinking that maybe the summer events, especially when they are really loud and festive, is it very much a cost prohibitively expensive if we rotate different parks so that spread the love to all the
Yeah.
the deserving communities too, so that they don't feel like every summer they just have the whole summer with all the percussions and
Yep.
speaker. That was just one thought.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I do know that the team offers concerts in multiple different parks. And we tend to choose some of the larger parks that can accommodate the bigger, size groups for those concerts where we're pulling in some really good names, and we also make it a point to focus on East Portland. That is called the East Portland Arts Festival. I will say that it's likely that we'll be looking at a different location next year for the simple fact that Ventura Park had no potable water and I had to spend a lot of money to bring a water truck in because that was our first heat wave. And so so we weren't able to provide fresh water, so we had to truck water in, and that is not ideal for summer programming. So we probably won't go back to Ventura for a large scale event like that anyway, but I appreciate that input.
If I can
Sure.
just go along with that thread, our neighbors or folks that are living adjacent to the park, are they informed of the events prior to?
I believe they are,
So that you
yeah,
like,
maximum.
take the weekend or something?
Yeah, we send out notices into the geographic area. And I was just highlighting that in addition to the information Director Long shared, that we get a lot of almost 95% of our events are done in coordination with a community partner, whether it's a neighborhood association or a cultural group. And we get many requests at many locations. And so we do have a criteria list in making sure we're kind of reviewing the activity, the communities that are looking to target or be centered or represented in the productions in there. And there's some that they all don't make it through too. So we are narrow that down each summer, but each summer we do have that process where we have a kind of thorough review and vetting process to see what are the interest areas, where are the potentials for that partnership and what are those activities, and really try to make sure to have equitable distribution across the city as well.
This is my last follow-up question. Have you seen any infrastructure that could be put in place to dampen noise? Because I'm sure this is not just a Portland issue.
Trees.
There are berms and other things that could be put up. I mean, is that something
I mean,
that
I
you've
think
looked
that-
into, or is it just rotating probably be the best
Yeah.
bet?
I think
as
if we were
Sue-Ann said,
to-
sharing the love
Yeah.
across the city.
And
I think where we are building new parks and we're creating spaces where intentionally for outdoor performances, there is that opportunity. But for parks that already exist, I think that would be cost prohibitive. And we do, we do try to rotate them, and to Maximo's point, like, we've even had applications by our own staff that have been approved for summer free for all events, so.
Is this part of this thread? Go ahead, Maximo.
yeah, and there, we do review as well as kind of ongoing data collection to where even sites that we're returning to or sites that are new that we're setting up, everything from the logistics of the site setup to where to face the stage, where to face the speakers, where we can make sure to have all that with the focus on making sure we minimize noise and impact.
We are required to get noise permits, even for our own events, so that means like we can only go up to a certain decibel, we can only play so late, so.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. What's the cutoff time?
10, is it 10?
Is it 10? Because I live in Mississippi and we have the street fair, and I mean, it's just one day a year, and you just have to let it go.
Enjoy it or get out of town.
Exactly. And I think the most important thing is notified, so you have an option to.
For sure.
Right, so
I
I
see
have
Casey.
three, sorry, were you gonna?
No, I was just gonna note that Casey has.
Yeah, I have 3 people with hands up. I have Casey, Maximo, Patty looks like he slipped in there, and then Sabrina. Is it part of a thread? Is it part of this thread conversation, or are you starting a new one? Casey.
Thank you, and this is totally unrelated. I think I saw on one of the package that was sent to us that the beginning of July, BES transferred control of its trees, basically to urban forestry, without transferring any employees, if I saw that right. So I'm kind of wondering how that all went and how it's going.
Sure, it was the Environmental Services Tree Planting Program, whereby they plant trees on private property. And yes, it transitioned as of July 1. We have a memoranda of agreement in place. They transferred with it some resources, i.e. contracts, but not staff. And so our urban forestry staff will be managing that program. And BES will still be planting trees, for instance, in their natural areas, may plant trees with neighbors. They have a sort of a watershed health program. They still are required to get permits from urban forestry for any tree planting. But yes, the BES tree planting program has transitioned to urban forestry. That was a part of that resolution from November of last year.
That's fun.
Yeah, no, not that.
Okay.
Any follow-up questions, Casey?
And it's going well.
The next person I have is Maximo.
I was able to speak to.
All right, wonderful. Sabrina, you're up.
Yeah, mine was to the previous topic. Just in my experience at Rosewood, whenever we do summer events to placemaking and things, we've had quite a bit of interactions, negative interactions with our neighbors. I think there is a little bit of just change of more community activation in East Portland. So there is just some natural pushback until there is like a conversation around like, here's who we are, here's what we're doing, you're welcome to come out, so I think a little bit of it is, East Portlanders are used to kind of being left alone and not having a lot of activation in their parks and things. So some of it is natural, and it just takes some relationship building and some culture shifts within East Portland as our different parks and public spaces are being more activated. So just adding a little context from my perspective, because Rosewood does community events that seem very loud because it's more activation than has been there historically. But once there's a conversation and we develop that rapport and that relationship, things get better over time.
Thank you, Sabrina. Patty, go ahead.
Not related to the concert, but at Grant Park, on Saturdays, there's a group that meets every morning to do step class outside. And she has the headset and the speaker. Long story short, this has gone on for probably 2 years, but neighbors complained because it's 8 AM, 8 to 9. And because of you can hear the headset. And so anyway, long story short, the park ranger came by and gave, us, the teacher the notice that, A, you have to have a permit and on and on and on. And I guess with the group and, personally, you feel like you're in a park and it's supposed to be used for groups. I mean, and then I know that at Grant Park during football practice, they have a giant boom box that's blast music for probably 2 hours. And I guess a lot of people in the group were really like, we have to get a permit, it's only an hour, how do you navigate that? And it became kind of a huge conversation. So I'm just kind of putting it out there, like, it just felt, for the first time, I felt like this is what a park's for. And so it just didn't feel right, and I'm not sure if there's an avenue. I mean, a permit is great, but we're a real small group. And it just seemed like a lot of steps. And the confrontation with the meeting with the ranger was not pleasant. It was like we were just these bad people, trying to use the park. And so is there a process? Just, how do you just have to have a permit for everything?
Todd and then Max.
I mean, I'm sorry you had that experience first. And so Claudio and I manage the permit program, so I'd be happy to follow up with you and kind of learn more about it, because you should be able to do like informal activities where where you're just gathering, where there's commercial activity where someone's like running a business and doing something, then we do require permits. So maybe we
Which I
can
understand.
learn more about the details.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm
Thank you.
sorry you had that experience with the park ranger, and I'd like to learn more about that so we can get feedback too.
Thank you.
Next one, go ahead.
And finally, I could probably just share that the Bureau of Development Services, which currently right now oversees the noise office, is going through a review process of Title 18, which is the city's noise code as well. And they're just reviewing that, looking for opportunities for clarity, any adjustments, as well as just kind of outline enforcement and kind of overall criteria. It's probably going to be a multi-month, probably over a year process that they're going through, reviewing a variety of stakeholders and contributors to kind of review what that is. But that work is currently underway. That might also provide some guidance in terms of like, how are things activated throughout the city, everything from open spaces, industrial spaces, construction, and everything that might be included in that code.
Great, thank you.
I would also like to see like what type of language is there, from previous experiences with another city. There was some inherent language that was in there that targeted particular cultural groups and how they use the parks. And one thing that we started switching from is from a noise ordinance to a sound ordinance. So folks weren't being disrespected about the type of sounds versus noises, which, if you're playing particular type of music and people are talking about it being noisy, what have you, it can cause more contention. So there's something to think about when wrestling with that, because repetitive noises, that's drums, right? And so who are you targeting with that? So I would love to see the language of how it comes out and how that can be perceived by community members, or whether they're feeling welcomed into that space or being excluded because of their particular cultural practices. Thank you.
Maximo, if there's a public process or input, you can share that with the board.
Yeah.
How does parks handle pickleball? That seems to be the that sound.
All right, so go ahead.
We can talk about it.
Oh.
I see we have a little bit of time to people take advantage of this forum.
But we do
We
still
still have
have Todd and Claudio that are reporting out during my time as
Oh,
well.
okay.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
We got carried
You got
So
to
you don't have,
first.
you don't have 15 minutes.
Okay. All right. I won't. Talking about cultural respect and all that, lately I've been getting a lot of community reach as part of the person who's quite active in the Chinese community. there's a lot of frustration coming from classical Chinese garden, Lansu garden. And now there's a chain link fence around and being vandalized by throwing eggs and feces smudging onto the walls. And I understand park's relationship with the garden. We are the landowner, right? But we don't operate the park. Is there something parks can do when the organization is just at its ends? Like what can we do? Safety, cleanliness, and the whole perception when there are Chinese delegations are coming here to visit the garden, one of the best in the world, and then we present ourselves as just kind of in disarray. And is there something that as parks we can make a difference here, or we just?
Well, I can say that city agencies came together to secure that fencing and got it up pretty quickly. And it is really unfortunate what is going on in that neighborhood. I don't think it's Lansu Garden specific. I don't think it's Asian culture specific. I think that that neighborhood is really sort of been on the receiving end of some very challenging social ills. And because it's a public facility, I think people who act out in bad ways, are targeting it. I don't think it has anything to do with anything else. Our agreement is such that they are responsible for managing and maintaining the facility. But we have been in contact with them around the vandalism that has happened. Tanya Booker, who is on our staff and is also on the Lansu Chinese Garden board and represents the city on that board. And I know that she's been working with them as much as she can without being in conflict on how to elevate those concerns, and they've done quite a good job. The city's been very responsive, but I think it's a larger issue that's happening in that neighborhood. So we've done what we can, and we'll continue to be supportive.
But have you sought out the neighborhood association?
They are involved.
Like the city is, like they're full on alert right now over it. They're not having a hard time getting people paying attention to the problem.
Thank
Just
you.
no one is able to solve the problem.
Right, but you just, solving the problem is the problem.
Okay, so it's still evolving at this point. It looks like we're gonna go ahead and switch to Todd or Matthew. Todd?
I think Claudio's gonna give.
Claudia, why don't you go first on the
Budget.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. I'm Claudio Camposano, Finance, Property and Technology Manager. See some new faces that I don't know. Figured I'd introduce myself. So just wanted to give an update on sort of citywide budget process update for the upcoming fiscal year of 25-26, but also the current year. So on August 5th, the mayor and our new chief financial officer, Jonas Beery, released communications to update city staff regarding the upcoming 25-26 budget process. So yes, we just started on July 1, the 24-25 budget. So we're already starting the budget process for 25-26. And they noted that as Portland transitions to a new form of government, we've got to continue to lay the foundation for financial sustainability and prioritize resolving the city's long-term financial challenges. So unfortunately, next fiscal year is expected to be at least as difficult as this last one. The city's revenues are projected to be potentially lower than prior forecasts, and the city is facing significant pressure on ongoing costs, including health benefit rates, which increased significantly this fiscal year, and we expect some further increases in 25-26. They also noted that the city has legal obligations that require ongoing funding, as well as continued budget pressure due to major capital projects in progress and expiring one-time funding. So each service area has funds with gaps between projected costs and revenues, That includes general fund, transportation fund. We've spoken about the Parks Levy, Portland Permitting and Development Fund. They also stated that the obligation this fiscal year is to identify efficiencies, reduce expenses where possible and reasonable, and limit cost increases while maintaining critical services. The mayor directed the city administrator to work with the deputy city administrator of budget and finance, that's the CFO for the city, as well as the city budget office, to recommend options for limiting current fiscal year expenses. Reducing expenses now will help alleviate pressures in 25-26 and beyond. The detailed guidance around the current fiscal year will be provided by the end of August, so in the next couple of weeks, according to the memo. And they wrote that the mayor will work with the city administrator to develop initial budget guidance for 25-26 for release in mid-October, with the expectation that the mayor-elect will have an opportunity to provide input and refinement after the November election. For the fall supplemental budget, that's the fall bump for those of you that have been around for a little bit, to be brought before City Council for approval by the first week of October. The mayor directed the city administrator, deputy city administrator of budget and finance, and the city budget office to put forward recommendations that reserve as much available one-time funding from this year into 25-26 for the 25-26 budget process, as much of that as possible. So bureaus should expect no new general fund resources for the current year, one-time needs. So the fall bump will not be a source of one-time money. And finally, the mayor noted that he expects the city leadership team to ensure that we utilize a citywide lens. The city leadership team is collectively going to vet and weigh bureau and service area budget proposals before they bring forward the 25-26 requested budget. Any new funding needs must be weighed holistically against reductions that will be required to free up resources. So as the budget process evolves, the mayor also noted that public involvement process should also change. Historically, the city has convened budget advisory committees, or BACs, to gather public input for bureau requested budgets. As we move into a more collaborative and unified service area structure, BACs at the bureau level are no longer going to be required. He did note that while the city moves toward a new service area engagement structure, this year, some bureaus have existing bureau budget committees that may provide important input if bureaus choose to use them. The Parks Board has the Financial Sustainability Working Group. So our current plan is to continue to meet while we learn more about the new budget process. Urban Forestry Commission will continue to get periodic budget updates similar to what's been done in the past. And the mayor directed the city administrator and assistant city administrator to work with the budget office to recommend a new process for community engagement in the budget beginning October for fiscal year 25-26 budget development, recognizing that approach is going to evolve over the next several years. So that's it for the citywide budget process update. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claudia. Any questions from the board? Thank you so much, Todd.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Sure. Hi, Todd Lofgren, Deputy Director of Vibrant Community Support Services. Just wanted to give you a brief update on the polling we've been doing. So as Claudia mentioned, city has long-term financial challenges. Important tool for parks has been the Parks Levy to provide operating resources to services for parks. We're in our fourth year of the Parks Levy, and we expect it to be fully expended by the end of year 5. So that's June 30th, 2026. So we've got kind of 3 elections between now and then to queue up a decision for the city council about whether we should renew the Parks Levy and at what level. And so we're doing some public polling also with the new Office of Arts and Culture, because they're part of our service area, to see what likely voters for the May 2025 ballot would think about renewal of the Parks Levy at some level, and then also looking at the arts tax as well, whether it could be a complement possibly on a levy what they think about the arts tax in general. So we expect to have those results back by next week probably, and then be able to offer an opportunity to have like a special briefing for interested Parks Board members. We've done this in the past. And so we could work with you either at this meeting or after this meeting, as long as we don't hit quorum, we'll have the special meeting. And if we'll also offer this to the Portland Parks Foundation. And so if one or two members want to join that meeting, and we have a separate Parks Board meeting, we're happy to do that. And I expect it'll be maybe Thursday or Friday next week. And for whatever reason, if that doesn't work for people, we can do another one. It'll be Sarah Huggins and myself just doing it. And it's about probably 20 minutes of material, and then we can do Q&A. So I think it would be over in like 45 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, let's touch base after.
Sure.
Well, any questions from the board? We have Matt, and then we have Allison.
Thank you. So the polling is exclusive of the capital needs report says?
No, it's for the operating budget. So the parks levy, and then also the arts tax. In November of last year, we did some polling for both bond and levy. So we could share that at the meeting too, the results.
Go ahead, Allison and Casey, I have you next.
Yeah, thanks. From the standpoint of folks who are interested in, increasing arts funding, have there been projections around how this combination of, tacking that on to the levy in some way, how that might increase arts funding, or what the expectation would be if that does pass?
Yeah, the new Office of Arts and Culture just really started July 1st. So they have kind of a vision. They really don't have as much work done yet about scoping the level of service that the community would like, and then having council support, and then putting dollars against that. I think the current staff have some ideas. So what we're really tested in this poll is how to replace the arts tax, which is about $10 million. And so we are testing removing that tax to see, adding it to a property tax to see what voters think about that. But there are many options, and like you said, could be much higher levels for arts investments, but in this poll, we just focused on what the existing arts tax is collecting.
Thank you. It would be interesting to see how the polling was framed. Could the board have access to like the language that was used?
For sure, yeah, I'll share the questions and everything. It's a public poll, so all of it is.
Great.
We just try to give a preview to the Parks Board and the Foundation before it goes out to media. So, yeah.
Thank you, Todd. Casey, go ahead, please.
This is probably in the materials we sent out. If there was, I apologize for asking the question, but what's the status of our PSIF application at this stage?
So I think the most recent round got delayed, and I can't recall, I want to say early fall, they said. Do you have a recollection?
Yeah, they've been kind of non-committal on a specific time. I think they were overwhelmed by the number of applications that came in. I guess that was May or so, and they've been rolling the date back. And so it's still under review.
Thank you so much. I believe that concludes the director's report.
Plus.
Yes, and we are on time, so I'm happy about that. So we're gonna be moving towards the working groups reports. So the Board Affairs Working Group, any report ins or any questions from the board? Thank you so much. Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group, any information you would like to share with the board, or are there any board members that have any questions? Great, thank you. Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. Financial Sustainability Working Group. Any report ins, or are there any questions from the board? Thank you so much. Community Engagement Working Group. Any information to share with the board? Or are there any questions from board members? Rolling through these. We also have the Parks Levy Oversight Committee, which Casey is heading and is representative. Anything to report in, Casey, or are there any questions from the board?
Apologize for the lateness.
Thank you, Casey. We forgive you. All right, moving forward, we have Jessica Green from the Portland Parks Foundation. Welcome, Jessica. Good to see you after a break. You have the floor.
Hi, everybody. Well, our breaking news that came in a few hours ago is that the Water Bureau sent a recommendation for the contractor for the Elk, which means things are moving forward. So that's an exciting milestone in the Elk, and they were a bit behind schedule, but they expect to see a contract in place in early October, with the Elk still returning in the spring, but that's our big news of the week there. And then the other kind of piece that we're working on right now is our Friends and Allies programming. So we're putting together the final pieces for our fall summit. And for those of you who are new to the fall summit, it's a one-day event that's an opportunity for friends and partners and city employees to gather and kind of do some deep dive workshops on focusing on capacity building, partnership building. And so we have a really exciting lineup there. It'll be on November 13th. So I would love for all of you to attend if you're able, but also push it out. It is a free opportunity. And we have Allison Desir, who is the author of Running While Black and doing a lot of work in the Northwest in terms of raising awareness of organizations working to create more equitable access to outdoors and parks and nature. So that's a nationally known author, and also working in coalition building. So an exciting keynote to then build on 3 different workshops that we have happening with local leaders. We have one set up with Daron Coles, who is the co-founder of the Blueprint Foundation, no longer there, but we'll be doing a workshop on creating meaningful and impactful partnerships. We also have B.A. Ogden from Luminous Together, who came through us through our Joey Pope Leadership nominations, and we'll be doing a 3-hour workshop on titled Building Bridges Through Community Events and Programs, and really thinking about how to bring community together through community events and programs. And then the third one is Parks Board very own Erin Zollenkopf will be leading a 3-hour workshop on financial literacy, as we find that many people in these smaller grassroots organizations are charged with overseeing nonprofit finances and don't necessarily have a background in it. So just a great lineup there, and I do encourage everyone to get the word out. And then also our small grants, we have $2,000 small grants that we have 2 different cycles, spring and fall, and our fall cycle is opening September 1st. So also I will send around some information to the Parks Board just in terms of how to highlight these and spread the word with your network. But that cycle will open September 1st. And I also, we're recruiting small grants review committee members. So that will go out. We also usually have a committee member from this group. Bonnie was representative of that last spring, but Bonnie has rolled off. So that is, if there is anybody that is interested, you can follow up with me. I will send a little detail about what it entails, and there is a stipend that goes along with it. What it entails is it's one meeting in probably November. It's about a 4-hour meeting, and then it's reviewing about 20 to 25 applications. They're very short because they're $2,000 grants. Casey's been through the process before, so I don't know if you want to share a little bit about it, but it's a really great way, especially if you're newer to the landscape of parks, to get to know not just the community group that you are involved with, but kind of the full breadth of what's happening out there.
Yeah, I'll make a plug for it because I learned a lot. I really was glad I sat on it, and if I had the time, I'd love to do it again. But for everybody else on the board, really think about doing it because you will learn a lot about what's going on in Portland. Probably a lot of places you don't know where activity is going on. So it's a great program. It was great and an honor to be on the board.
Thanks, Casey. Yeah, so I will follow up with all those details. We'll probably go live for the Friends and Allies Summit registration in early September. And then, like I said, the Small Grants Review Committee, not only if you're interested in participating, but also sharing it with your networks would be really great because it's also just a great way for us to get to know other individuals in the community. And oftentimes, again, people sitting on our committees, it's another way to get more engaged in their work and highlight it in various ways through things like our summits. And lastly, our candidates forum. I'm a little behind on corralling everybody, but I will be following up. I saw it was helpful. There was the spreadsheet that showed what people are interested in here. So I've got 3 names of yes, maybe, maybe. And I will follow up with those of you on that in terms of scheduling a time to talk about the candidates forums. But something that we've been thinking about in that is how do we engage and partner with local parks organizations in each of the districts for those forums. So Jason, our programs manager, and I started to map out some of our current partners that are in each of the districts and seeing how they might want to be involved in those forums. For example, Leach Botanical Garden, I now reached out to say that if we're doing that and we're interested, they would love to host a forum. And for their district, things like that. And that's sort of our news at the Parks Foundation right now.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Could you make sure to loop both myself and Ally into the small grants selection for board members who are interested in serving on that, as well as the candidates forum? Just so we can make sure that folks are not overextending themselves. Trying to keep that copacetic in here if possible. So thank you so much. Allison, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to shout out right away that I'd be happy to participate with the grant review committee. I've done similar review panels with the Multnomah County Cultural Coalition and the Oregon Cultural Trust, and it's such a great process to go through. So happy to connect with you or.
Yeah, that would be great. So if you have my email, just if you could shoot me an email, that would be wonderful.
I will connect you too. Great, thank you.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Allison.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Jessica. And we are moving to the Earthquake Burnside Bridge Q&A session.
So we have both Brett Horner and Karina Rendez from Assets and Development on our side. And then we also have Steve Drahota here. He just turned on his camera. We're hoping that this would be a Q&A only so we can keep it within 15 minutes.
With that said, I believe this was brought forward through the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group. I'm just wondering if anybody from that working group or David as the chair, if you wanted to just bring some context of why this was brought forward to the board as a Q&A. A couple sentences just to help us out.
I think that we had an opportunity to ask and get some really good feedback, provide feedback and get some answers to questions we had. I wanted to just extend that opportunity to the board. The team from the city shared out various designs. Impacts of those designs in the process.
Great, thank you.
Helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you so much.
The presentation was shared with the board, so.
So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to the board if they have any questions.
How's the participation online for all of the surveys and kind of voting?
I can take that. So for the folks that don't know me, I'm Steve Drahota, excuse me, the design team project manager. Megan Neal is attempting to get on, so if you happen to see her joined in the middle of the Q&A, then maybe she can take some of these too. So I heard the question is really one about the public open house, the online open house that was sent out. It closed at the end of July. There were just under 20,000 different individuals that provided their input. The numbers show about 170,000 visited the site, with a full 20,000 actually completing the survey, which are phenomenal numbers, better than we've had on any stage of the other phases of the project. And it was quite interesting. For those that want to know details, we do have some former community design advisory group feedback that shows the distribution of numbers and that kind of thing. But the fundamental question was around bridge type on the east approach. And there was a slight favor for an arch type over a cable stay type, about 45% for the cable stay and 55% for the arch. So very similar when you think of how the voting went. So we're really pleased with the turnout, good representative demographics of the city, a large number of age variety, and a full mix across the board. So like I said, I know the county is quite pleased, and we are also quite pleased. We think is representative and really helps the community design advisory group help to make a recommendation, which is actually probably going to happen on Thursday evening. So interesting time for the project.
Thank you. I have Patty and then Ally.
Just a quick question. Has there been any comments on making a more dynamic expression of the bridge? Because my first reflection of the options, it seemed kind of, I don't know, sedate. It seems like this is such an opportunity to kind of push the envelope, because this is going to be a 50-year bridge. I mean, I just wonder if you've gotten any more feedback on kind of the look and direction we're headed.
Yeah, I'll first say that we received lots of feedback across the board, everything from trying to make a bold statement within the city all the way to, we like the fact that the current existing bridge is somewhat subdued when you think about how its views from the deck are not interrupted. So we saw a whole variety of comments across the board. One of the key principles around the west approach is that it frames into the National Historic District. Oh, and here's Megan. And so one of the findings from our environmental review phase was that we could not have any above deck superstructure that would block the views into the historic district or out of the historic district. And so that sets the stage for a girder style on the west approach over Waterfront Park. As we move to over the river, really, we studied during the preliminary stages of the project, what would it mean to bring the bridge up high enough so you didn't have a movable bridge? But that would have meant that the bridge would have touched down on the west side all the way at Powell's, and on the east side all the way at somewhere between 12th and 17th Avenue, a massive structure which didn't make any sense. Therefore, a movable bridge of the Basque style, similar to what's out there today, was selected during the environmental review phase as the preferred alternative. So it left us with this longer span on the east, and that's what we're really looking at finding the bridge type for. So we feel that we did a pretty robust study of different options for that east approach, narrowed it down to the few that were inside of the study, and those are the options, still in just a crude form basis. And the next phase is to take what we have for form and then apply some further architectural updating for it, refinements and sculpting, shaping, to make the whole thing continuous and have some continuity. So more to come on that front. And at this point, we're basically at structural form type selection phase with a lot of fun stuff to happen in the future.
Great, thank you.
Ally, please go ahead.
Yeah, if memory serves, there were a few different arch types, the basket handle, the vertical one. Has there been a favorite amongst the arch types?
To take take these still, Megan, or if you want to jump in.
Yeah, go for it, Steve.
There was a distribution for the public survey response according to the arch types. The basket handle did resonate very highly from the arch style. So did a version that frankly, the Community Design Advisory Group dismissed last week, which is a version that has arch ribs without any struts in between them. So it's open up to the sky. But in comparison of those two, the Community Design Advisory Group, and this is consistent with what was shown from the public, both favored the basket handle style, which is basically it takes those arches and lean them together towards the middle. So literally like a basket handle, that's the name. So that was the one that is most preferred for the arches themselves.
Well, that's my favorite, so that's exciting.
Thank you. I have a question regarding, have you considered adding vegetation to this particular infrastructure? I mean, one thing that we do talk about is urban heat island effect, and this is a good, we have walkable spaces on one side. Is there a possibility of bringing some green space between the pedestrians and bikers and the traffic?
Something that will be explored during the next phase as we move from our 30% into the final design phase. At 30% point is in October. But after that, we're going to start looking into things like that. We do have an objective of thinking, this sort of human experience coupled with ease of maintenance. And so those two things, we're trying to balance those two different features and find a solution that actually works for both. But at this point, I think we haven't even gotten to the point where we're exploring those kind of details. We certainly know that within the footprint of what we're doing, especially Waterfront Park, there's going to be lots of site restoration opportunities for replanting. So we're eager to get into that. But in terms of this urban design approach for On the Bridge, we're just starting to think of ideas to bring forward for that. Knowing full well that, yeah, the space for bicycle pedestrians is 17 feet. And we need to make sure we have that clear and the various space for the vehicles in the interior. So more to come in that. And we haven't explored all those kind of options quite yet.
Thank you so much. Sue-Ann, go ahead, please.
I think David raised his hand first.
Oh, I'm sorry, David, did not see you. Go ahead, and then Sue-Ann.
Well, yeah, thanks. I was just going to ask about, has there been any more narrowing on the connection on the east side with elevators or stairs, or what that configuration is going to be like? I don't remember seeing that in any of the surveys. It was really more about, hey, this is the structure type.
Yeah, I can take that one. So we did work closely with the city over the last several years to look at that connection from the proposed new bridge to the East Bank Esplanade. And actually the city said as part of their approval of our locally preferred alternative, they asked the project to look at a ramp connection. We did work through a ramp proposal that aligned with the city's design guidelines and values. And ultimately, we did decide that the ramp would not be included as part of this particular capital project, and that a ramp connection wouldn't be precluded should that come about as a future capital project. We also did look at elevators, but there were a lot of concerns from the community about elevators in this particular location. And then I think there are just a lot of concerns from the mobility device users about reliability of the elevators. So we really haven't identified a solution at this location, but we are continuing to work with the city on the future of this location.
Thanks, that'll be important. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Sue-Ann.
When I was looking at the online survey, the website focus a lot on how the bridge above the water, that portion looks. It didn't really have much of a visual of how it lands, especially into the historic district. Does it land right at where it is landing now, or does it actually extend further? I mean, I'm not east side, west side, historic district.
I can take that one. It basically lands at the same point on the west side of where it lands today. Frankly, on either side, it's very similar to where it is today. The end of the bridge moves ever so slightly to the east compared to what's out there to line up with the edge of the buildings, but within 30 feet of where its existing landing spot is. And that's really the exact same that's happening on the east side as well. So very
So
similar length of the bridge.
The center of the bridge it's higher. This is not a bascule bridge, right?
It will be a bascule bridge.
So
And
if it's a bascule bridge, why do we actually need to have the basket handle? There's so many ways to do a bascule without blocking any view, which this bridge, the basket handle, it's so similar to the Fremont Bridge in the distance. It seems like there's a little bit lack of identity of a bridge that can explore something that's a little bit more of a different feel and look than shadowing or like a baby Fremont.
for two different opposing opinions, even in this meeting, which is not dissimilar to what we saw from the public open house, and that's the discussion that's happening during the community design advisory group meetings on bridge type. So so to clarify, the bascule itself is the movable portion over the middle of the river, and the basket handle, I know similar names, is that longer span to the east of it. And the reason we have this long span to the east is frankly because of the seismic, the geotechnical conditions that exist on that east bank. Very liquefiable, which means a high seismic threat, a lot of potential for flow of that material. So we want to put the support for it. Yes, one side in the river, the other side, whatever the bridge type is, as far east as we can go. And thus this really long span on the east side compared to the west side, where we don't have such long spans, and therefore we can have a girder style and not have anything blocking or above the deck. So so that's kind of the way it's playing out. But I think even in this conversation, you're different styles that people seem to enjoy with different characteristics of each. And so why that online open house was so fascinating, especially seeing the written comments that were brought forward. Not dissimilar to what we've heard today in those views is what we got examples of through the online open house.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that does conclude the Q&A for this particular item on the agenda. Will there be another opportunity to bring them back and maybe have further conversations in future meeting? We will see. And again, thank you, Land Use and Infrastructure Group, for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
All right, we're moving on to our next item, the Monoma County and weather events item, and we have Chris Voss and Stacy Work.
Great,
Please
well,
correct me.
I can go whenever you guys are ready, you tell me.
You're on, Chris.
We are ready. Thank you
Well,
for coming.
Well, first off, thank you very much for joining you today. I'm really glad that we have this opportunity. I am joined by Stacy Bork in the chair's office, as well as one of my operations chiefs, Richard Higgins, that are also here to help answer any questions that you may have. I did actually provide some slides. They're in your packet. I also like to sort of see people. So I was going to walk through some of those slides as sort of some background, and I want to also give you guys plenty of time to answer some questions. And so I'll verbally walk through some of that information because I think that this is a little bit important. And the first slide and really kind of highlights a little bit on why we do this and why we're in this game. And you know, before you know,
Chris,
20.
Chris, 1 second, please.
Do you want to share the slides or do you want me to drive?
You know what? If you'd like to drive, that's fine. I like to see people sometimes too, so I could see some of what's going on. But
Yeah,
if,
just give us 1 minute to tee it up, okay?
no problem. And I'll keep talking while you're teeing it up, and it's not going to hurt sort of the background. I'm originally from the East Coast, so I love to talk.
As another East Coaster, if I can jump in really quickly, what would be really great is for you to complete or conclude your presentation, and then we're gonna open it up to the board for Q&A. Otherwise, you may not get to the end of the presentation. We have a lot of questions, but the floor is yours, and thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Well, like I said, thank you again. And if we go to the next slide, it really sort of it starts to talk about why we're in this game, and I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing with regard to sort of climate change and really just changes that we've implemented in the county. And this first slide talks about sort of heat-related visits to emergency rooms with extreme heat. And what's most notable here is that before 2020, the county averaged 82 emergency rooms a visit, 82 room visits a year just for heat. And so that was a year. And since 2021, we're actually averaging double that. And I was checking on the numbers just for this season. And as of August 4th, we were, I think, at 133. So once again, with another month or more left where we're going to see extreme heat, I think we're likely to stay at that double or maybe even more, depending if we do have another really, really hot stretch. And so the environment that we're working with has changed. We are seeing, days we're seeing more people come to our locations, but we're seeing more people in emergency rooms. And I think that that's notable. It's one of the drivers and why we're here, because we'd really like to see some of these numbers decrease. I'm not going to give every number when it comes to sort of people that succumb to heat, but I can tell you that 2021 was really a very big year for us. And that summer, we saw 72 fatalities for heat. It was, for a jurisdiction that we sometimes didn't see any before that, we would go entire seasons, and then to see 72, it's really changed the way we look at it. It's why we're kind of progressive here. So why don't we go to next slide? But I want to report the why. The why is we're trying to keep people safe. And then what we do is we work with the health department and a lot of other organizations annually to say, what are the levels at which we think we need to open up severe weather shelters or cooling centers or warming centers? And so we have I wanted to highlight some of the thresholds here, but you could see in the summer, it's very much we use the heat tool, and when we get to extreme levels on the heat tool, or if you see us get to the red level, which often is when we start to see temperatures at 100 degrees, there's a lot of other factors we're looking at, and we're looking at sort of overnight temps, we're looking at ED visits, we're looking at 911 calls. So we judge all these factors, and then we make a determination if we've met thresholds and then have to open, like I said, cooling centers or shelters. In the winter, it's a little bit more based on just the temperature. Whereas the summer, there's a lot of other factors, everything from humidity, where really the temperature doesn't tell the true story. It's why we use sort of the heat risk tool. But in the winter, when you see those temperatures at 25 or below for more than 4 hours, or if you hear about a storm where we're going to get a lot of snow. I should also say this is very much based on forecast. So sometimes reality and forecast are two things that are not really aligned. A good example would be, I think, about a year, a year ago, where we saw what we were supposed to get 0.2 inches of snow, and we ended up getting almost a foot of snow in parts of the county. Well, at first we were deciding to do one thing, and once the snow really started sticking, we had to sort of change our direction. That's not easy for us, but I want to let you know that a lot of these decisions are based on forecast, but we try to be flexible when we see those forecasts changing. Next slide. And our numbers as far as activations, you can see those two numbers. The orange is summer, the blue is winter. We have 2 to sometimes 3.5 weeks a year for us has been where we've been for the last couple of years. The 2019-20, that what a great year that was. But 2016-17, not so good. And so we never really know what we're going to get. So we're prepared really for any of these instances whenever they happen. But I wanted to give you some numbers. I want to go one more slide. I talked a little about this briefly, but I want to talk, I won't highlight a little more, but some of the factors, and these are conversations we have. We're talking about air quality, emergency room visits, 911 calls, 211 calls. All of them are factors for us because we want to be flexible enough, even though we have thresholds. Sometimes it really does take a conversation. A tougher factor in there is like smoke. Hey, sometimes, you know, it will drive us to a decision. Even something like a Sunday when we know that fewer things are available, that will sometimes be a factor that will decide us, you know, move us in a direction to open or close. Next slide. So I'm not sure if the link will be in a PDF, but I will happy to sort of share that with Tran so you could see sort of our January after action report. I just want to highlight January for a little bit. It was our biggest event this last January, our activation. We opened 12 locations, and that excludes the one that we lost because the water pipe broke and actually flooded all the gear that we had already just put down. 2 locations lost power. Some of you might have lost power too. We've got a closed location. Sometimes we actually, one location, we rolled out a generator to keep it running. It was a full location. We work with utilities to sort of get these on the priority list, sometimes when they're active shelters to sort of get power restored. But you could see the volume. And that January event alone, we, you know, we had 1,356 people that we housed in shelters. And that excludes also hotel rooms for different people, different programs that sometimes don't work or can't go to congregate shelters. You know, sometimes that's families with you know, young kids and infants. So we've got a lot of programs to help folks. But the biggest one is our congregate care programs. And I know that's probably the one you're interested because that is the one that sometimes we reach out to the city of Portland and ask for some resources for. So next slide. So when we are choosing locations, I want to sort of highlight some of these pieces here. And our program really is based on, there's 3 pieces. There's facilities, there's people, and there's stuff. And we look at all 3. All 3 are year-round activities that we look at. And when it comes to choosing facilities, we are always looking for locations, large locations. You could see some of the things that we're looking for. But I could tell you when the Target closed in Hollywood, we're on the phone and we're calling, we're trying to find, like, hey, is there an opportunity here to maybe use this place as a shelter? We do sometimes in the winter rent a location or 2. That's a program that we have to sort of supplement because we could really no longer find as many viable locations. And so we've implemented some programs to sort of expand and to sort of get us there. But you'd be surprised, there's even though there's a lot of vacancies in the city and the county, it's not always very easy. And a lot of those facilities are really not very conducive to the type of work that we have to do, whether it's ADA, you know, accessibility. Sometimes it's location as far as access to, you know, mass transportation, but you name it. We look at a lot of factors in evaluating. And I think, I believe last year we evaluated 800 different locations just to give you an understanding of how many locations we're looking at and groups we're talking to. Next slide. So staffing, just sort of highlight, you know, the county does, you know, does do, you know, bulk of the work, but you can see there's a lot of partners here from the state, the city, net volunteers, the only way this works is with everybody involved. Next slide. And then supplies, just one of the, like I said, we bring everything. We're prepared to take any location and try to turn it into a shelter if we can. There are some that are a lot better than others. But when we do come, we'll bring everything from chairs to garbage cans. If we can actually use things at the locations, that helps us. It means it's a little bit less for us to move, and we're certainly, if we've got a great location, we put ourselves in a position where we don't want to sort of lose that location. And we also have a lot of programs to help protect locations. And so if anybody stopped by Congregation Beth Israel during this last July event, you know, we took a lot of care to covering artifacts, removing things, taking stuff down, protecting floors. I'd love to think that we go above and beyond there to try to, keep a facility and often, because we bring in cleaning crews sometimes too, I'd like to think that we often will leave many of them cleaner than when we first saw them. Next slide. So that's it. I'm really here to answer questions, and like I said, I've got Stacy here as well, and if you've got questions for her, and so I'd love to hear more from the team. And I really want to thank the city again for sort of supporting it. And while I said we go through 800 different locations, I don't want this lost, and I want to leave this group with this, is that some of the best locations we have are also city locations. We use a lot of locations that sometimes don't necessarily work out for us. And so your locations are ADA accessible. They do have bathrooms. They do have big open spaces. We search hard for other viable locations. We're appreciative of this relationship. And we wanted you guys to know that you often have some of the best facilities in town for us.
Thank you so much. I have compiled a couple of questions from the board, from board members, and from a prior letter that has not been sent out yet. So I want to front load it and then ask you a few questions, and then I'm going to open it up to the board. So when parks and recreation community centers are utilized as temporary emergency shelters, they are no longer being used as what they intended for, which are community centers, which provide valued community resources such as childcare, meal service, and as a safe place for both youth and elders. Temporary emergency shelter operations have displaced vulnerable communities who rely on these critical community services. It must also be acknowledged that facilities are impacted one day before and at least 3 days post demobilization, adding more days in which services are withheld from local vulnerable communities and residents. For example, this came through, that Charles Jordan Community Center is 2 blocks from New Columbia, the largest and most dense low-income housing development in the state. These residents rely on Charles Jordan Community Center for a wide variety of services on any given day. The Portland Parks Board is concerned that these community centers are being too heavily relied upon for temporary emergency shelters. There are also major concerns specifically around what has been deemed low barrier shelters in which drug use has occurred at these emergency shelters. The Portland Parks and Recreation Board would like to know who decides what areas are used first and what are the criteria used. You did point out some of that. There is also a sense that more affluent neighborhoods and community centers are not being utilized in similar or equitable ways. Is the county going to consider community centers in affluent neighborhoods, which are also the least vulnerable to severe weather events, and use their community centers to accommodate more vulnerable populations, which will result in a minimal impact on the residents in that area, unlike Charles Jordan? So there's some questions that have been buried there. So first, who decides what areas are used first? And what are the criteria that are used would be my first question.
Sure. And well, first off, let me say thank you for that question. And I do want to say that in the last 3 seasons, we've used community, I believe we've used a community center once. There's been 1 center in the last 3 seasons, and that was just this last January, where we used Charles Jordan. So while we open a lot, I wanted sort of acknowledged. I recognize Charles Jordan is a big facility. Sorry. It happens. Hey guys. So I just want to sort of acknowledge this other piece, is that when we actually had the conversation with the city, who's on a lot of our calls during these activations, we actually asked for, I don't believe we targeted this last season, Charles Jordan. We said, hey, listen, we're looking for, roughly 200 beds. I wanted to acknowledge, I think we lost 4 locations just from electricity alone. So it was very much impacting us. And it was why we reached out to the city. But I believe we're always we're not often in a position where we're saying we want this specific location. The last conversation that we had was like, hey, listen, this is what we think that we need with regard to beds or spaces. And I think we could be flexible there. If I also, during a conversation I had with the emergency management director with the city of Portland, I said, I also recognize that sometimes this can be a burden on your programs. I want to sort of acknowledge some of the statements. So if there's a situation where it makes sense to sometimes rotate it, so it's not the same community that may feel that, I'm on board. We're more than happy to sort of have that conversation too. Where it's tough for us though is that when we do know we have sort of a situation where it's a life and death scenario, and we can't get there with the agreements and or the locations we already have. It's why I very much appreciate the relationship we have. And I'm also, unlike years past, I think the fact that we've been able to add some volume, and like I said, we've only made one ask in the last 3 seasons. I think that hopefully your team also sees a reduction in the amount of burden and the amount of community that you have that also use those buildings.
Thank you. The other part of that
I do see some hands raised too. So Stacy's my partner. I might have left something out. So I want to make sure we have Stacy if there's something.
Okay, go ahead, Stacy.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. I'm Stacy Bork, she and her pronouns. I'm Deputy Chief of Staff to Chair Vega Peterson from Multnomah County. The one thing I wanted to add and round out a little bit with what Chris said is the City of Portland Parks has been a longstanding partner in our community's severe weather response, and we're extremely grateful and understand that our community centers serve very special, they're very special places. Charles Jordan is about 4 blocks from my house and my family accesses it. So I do understand when that facility specifically comes offline, it does have impact. One thing that we've worked really hard on over the last year is to move the Portland Parks sites down lower on our list, so that we're trying to find other locations first that don't require displacement of activity. So those could be vacant office buildings, existing community sites that the provider is not going to be operating. But that was a change that we've made over the last year. And just, I felt like that was important to share here is, Portland Park sites are not number 1 on their list. They're not number 1, 2, and 3 in that priority. They're often really far down because we do understand the impact that they have on community. The other piece that I'll say is we didn't bring the data today, but we should. Outside of the days when we're doing the demobilization and the setup, the vast majority of days that the centers are open are days that the center would otherwise be closed because the City of Portland has declared an emergency and it's not going to be operating their facilities. And so that's information that we're happy to provide if that rounds out the data. And we're also strengthening our demobilization so that we can turn over those buildings as fast as possible back to Parks and Rec so that they can reopen for community.
That would be great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to the board. And it looks like I have Sabrina and then Adam and then Sue Lynn.
Hi, thank you, Sabrina Wilson, Executive Director of the Rosewood Initiative. I kind of have a long question with a couple parts. I'm hoping I can make it clear, but I'm wondering, what are the characteristics of a shelter? I know we're using that term. Do you all have a way you define that? Because I've heard from experience of people's experience in shelters. Secondly, I'm wondering, are you tracking who is being served in these shelters? And do you already have gaps identified of who is not being served? I think that also goes to when people are being displaced from Portland Parks and Recreation programming. And finally, to kind of round that out, I'm wondering, what initiatives are being done to support other forms of emergency response. That's why I'm kind of wondering what's the definition of a shelter, because I think that might serve some populations of Portland, and the experience that people have had is not serving everyone. And so I'm wondering, do you have is shelter just a broad term and it can be whatever you want, or is it very narrow? And if it is very narrow, who is it serving? Who's being left out? And are there any initiatives to fill that gap and support other people and the way that they might best be served in these severe weather on these severe weather days?
Let me, I'll chip away at some of those questions. And you're right, shelter is really a broad term, and I use it a lot for meetings like this, but that's actually not the term we use. We call them disaster resource centers. So you might hear DRCs a lot more often, and it's a little bit more of an accepted term, but I could tell you what they are. And a DRC can be a lot of things, but really it's a safe location where anybody can go. We do not do intake, as in we do not screen people when they're coming in and ask them questions. Are you, while I know a lot of our winter operations probably are serving people that are experiencing homelessness, we do not ask that question. We don't care. We're providing a location or a safe space for anybody that potentially needs it. I also want to say that during the summer, we probably see more people that might be housed. Once again, we don't actually ask that question. I think probably the most notable one was during this last heat event, the Congregation Beth Israel, I think I mentioned that location. There was actually a fire incident across the street and an entire apartment building sort of evacuated, and many of them came into our DRC. They found a space where they can grab some water, sit in air conditioning, but once again, stay what we consider sort of safe, and we would provide some basic supplies. I think that when we talk about the difference between our DRCs and other locations, because there are some differences, like, hey, is a library a DRC? Well, what we will produce and what we do provide to our DRCs or our shelters are, you'll see staff that are trained to support those activities. You'll often will bring in someone that supports mental health. We'll often bring in someone that supports a medical component. There will be food and there will be water. We also often provide some supplies. And so there might be, there'll be a table there that often has some sort of, medical, whether it's bandages. And so that really sets aside our DOCs from a lot of other locations where if you go to one of our libraries, those are not options. You would not see food. You will not see medical. You will not see behavioral health. We also only transport people to our DOCs. We don't transport people to any other locations. So even if a rec center might allow people in on a really, really hot day, if let's say they were coming in and they can come in and sit down, when someone calls 211 or someone calls the county and they're looking to be transported or looking for a place to go, we target and we direct them to those DRCs because we know we also have more resources there for them than we do at other locations. So I hope that defines a little bit. It is a little bit about people. It's about the training. It's not so much about the people that are coming in. Our standpoint is all are welcome. Does that help answer that one piece?
Yeah, I'll let others go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Adam, please go ahead.
Thanks. Sabrina, you took one of my 4 questions directly out of my mouth, so thank you. Along that same view, it seems like a lot of this discussion has been around augmenting space for emergency shelter rather than cannibalization. In other words, that when we use a parks facility, we actively remove something from a community center while supplanting it for other folks to get in. And so I have 3 questions that are kind of connected to that. And the first one being is, Chris, you mentioned that you all are referring to this as a DRC. Do you think the community views this differently than a shelter? The second question is there coordination with hospitals or emergency services? So if folks are calling 911, they find access to your cooling centers? And the third one is more of a data disaggregation question is, are the cooling centers that you're selecting, and does that criteria have any sort of connection to where the 911 calls are coming from?
Yeah, so I'll take some of those and those last ones. Why we utilize Congregation Beth Israel, if you look at the heat dome, you'll see that that actually zip code had the largest number of fatalities. We chose that location for a purpose. Anybody walking around that area would notice that a lot of the buildings, these older brick buildings that sort of absorb the heat all day and then expel that heat back into the apartments at night, create sort of a more of a risk, and is why we've seen more injury in some of those areas. It also is an area where you see a lot of older buildings with windows that don't open, people don't have air conditioners. So we absolutely look at the data, and to the extent that we can, try to find locations that we think will be very viable and reduce the risk. It's absolutely something we do. We also work with a lot of people on the medical side, and so much so that people may not realize this, but when someone is actually, not everybody's leaving a hospital actually has a place to go. And so during the winter, we found that January event, we found that our DRCs were receiving people directly from hospitals that were being let go, but either couldn't go home because maybe their home had no heat, or maybe they had no place to go. And so we do work really, really closely with those events. In fact, we kept the location open in East County, which saw a lot more ice, but also at the request of the 911 center that was like, hey, we're seeing numbers here and we have this situation where we need to be able to, bring people somewhere. And so I think that goes back to our flexibility. We are talking to public safety, we are talking to health sector, but more than anything, we're trying to reduce the risk for the overall community during those really, really extreme days. I know those are the last two. Sorry, your first question, I'm happy to sort of go back that one if you want to sort of reiterate it. But yeah, I want to say our morning calls, when we're discussing this, we invite there's 400 people in the invite, and we typically get about 150 people that show up to those calls during a busy activation. So there's a lot of pieces involved, from TriMet to our cities to our utilities, that everybody's part of this.
Okay, great. That's super helpful. Sorry, Casey, one more quick clarification question. Chris, you mentioned that you work with and talk with emergency responders. Can you clarify what that means? Is that a policy where you're directing folks after a certain, if a 911 call comes in, for example, for heat exhaustion, is that person, does that sort of, trip another process to have that person routed to a cooling center, or is it all just sort of ad hoc?
I want to say we're more at the 50,000 foot level, but if Bob Kazi calls me from the 911 center and says, hey, listen, this is what we need, or we need to be flexible, we're going to listen. That's kind of what we did for Gresham, when I believe it was actually their fire chief that really made that ask. And many of those, you probably know, fire, law enforcement, Portland Bureau of Emergency Management, they're all on our call. So they're all part of this coordination and provide input as to the overall direction. And we do also break out. So if they have a specific need and they're looking to put people somewhere, like I said, we're going to entertain and have that conversation about how best do we keep people safe. So I can provide some different names. You guys probably know Steve Bregman, who we work with on a regular basis, because even all of our locations in the city of Portland, when we evaluate a location, it's not just Multnomah County. The fire department is there with us, walking through those locations and bringing their perspective and their voice over whether it's a viable location. It's something that we should pursue.
And Adam, let me touch on one of your questions really quick, your early one. Today, Multnomah County has nearly 3,000 shelter beds available on a year-round basis. Those beds expand during the winter outside of this effort. And the beds that Chris talked about through our kind of emergency sheltering or severe weather response, he called them disaster resource center. In the public, we're using the term shelter because that's most common for us. And so I wanted to just make sure that was really clear, that these beds are over and above the 3,000 that we have on a nightly basis across our community. And this year we're adding another 500.
Right. I appreciate that, and purely only voice that because it does seem like the potential solution to avoiding using parks facilities in emergency situations is rather upstream. And so the more redundancy that we can build into other different systems and use these shelters as catalyzing spaces for people to maybe, find help or find safety. So it's not just rinse and repeat, but I'll turn it over to Casey.
Actually, I believe Sue Lynn was first, but I do want to remind everybody that we do have public comments coming at 6:45, so we have about 3 minutes. So Sue Lynn, if you want to go ahead and ask your question or make your comment, but I might have to just interrupt you at the 6:45 mark.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. This is Swen, and I have not heard the mention of Metro's facilities like Expo and Convention Center. What has Metro been able to offer as a partner in our great city here?
Yeah, great question. We do work with Metro too. In fact, some of our biggest events we've ever had, the convention center has been a great partner for us. So this last winter, they were not available for us. The previous winter, they were. In fact, the previous winter, it was our second largest event. We had about 800 people in the convention center. A bigger location than we ever want, but we do work with Metro too. And so there's two facilities that we utilize. We would utilize both the Expo Center and the Convention Center potentially. And they're not the only ones. We've got partners. This last January, we also used the state. So there were actually state facilities that were utilized as well. So a lot of nonprofits, state, everybody's on board. Like I said, we went through 800 different locations. And I do want to sort of highlight, the solution is not just these. I do think there's a community piece. I know I worked a lot this last January, but I could tell you after the first night I came home and there were 6 strangers living in my house that my wife knew. A lot of people lost power. And I do think that there's a lot of solutions out there. We open our shelters and our DRCs, hopefully be sort of that last resort for people that don't have other options. We don't ask, but we're glad we could sort of be there. But we do think there's a huge community piece here that will help us out as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are at close to 6:45 and just asking if there's anybody online that came for public comments. We don't have anybody in person, so we can go ahead and move forward. Casey, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Corbin. And thank you, Chris and Stacy and Richard, who I haven't seen yet, for attending and giving us some of your time, and also for the work. And I also appreciate what Stacy said earlier about lowering the priority of the parks facilities down the list a bit, because that's really what we're concerned about. On not only serving communities that we're worried about, which are also communities you're worried about, but also making sure that parks and recreation facilities and resources are not aren't overly used. I think at the beginning, Corbin asked you for one of the questions that she had, and that she asked you was if there was a list of factors that was considered by Metro before they, in determining what the places that they would use for DRCs or shelters. And I don't think we've seen anything like that, or even an answer as to whether they actually have one or not. We did see the list that you had in terms of what you guys considered in choosing the appropriate place, just what you were looking for. But I don't know if that's the only extent. If it is the only extent that you guys use for factors, the concern I have is there's nothing on that list that takes into consideration what the use of the facility is for, and who the communities they are serving is for. So if it's only one-sided in terms of what you need, as opposed to what is going on with the existing facility, that does seem to be unfair. So I guess I've just essentially 3 questions. One is, do you have a list? Is there one? Second question is, if there is a factor list, does it consider the fact that the uses of the existing facility you're thinking about using? And the last question on this is the inventory of places that you now consider expanding or not. There was actually a reference by Stacy earlier to potential business buildings. We've got a lot of space there. There might be some use there. But those are essentially my three questions right now. Thank you.
I'll start with the expanding piece. The reality is, yeah, our list actually is expanding. It's the only way we probably could have opened up as many locations as we did this last January. That event, even just a few years ago, would have been difficult for us to meet our ultimate goal of not turning anybody away. I will also say that as sometimes I think we're adding quicker than we sometimes lose, as in a lot of times we're dealing facilities that are changing. I could tell you when we are talking to some of those vacant locations, you know, they're not looking for the type of lease and or the type of use that we sort of have, which is more of a we also need to be sort of a 24/7. So I think that those conversations, they do bear fruit. It just sometimes takes us to go through 30 or 40 of them to sometimes net one that's sort of a viable and one that we could sort of agree upon. I'm happy to, I put in one slide, I put a couple things that we were looking for. There are other things that we do look for. You asked the question about, is there the previous use one of the things that we take into consideration? That's a conversation that we have. It's not it's not on a list as in sort of a deal breaker. I could tell you certainly it's a factor though. It's a factor because as I think I said before, I think we had one ask in the last 3 seasons for one location in parks. And so obviously it's something that we consider. I don't believe it's in the hard line look of when we're going out there and we're just trying to find viable locations. We know that Portland Parks has viable locations. Just because it's viable doesn't mean that it's the first place that we potentially utilize though. And so that is why we've had a conversation with Parks. And this last January, we also want to work with sort of the city on, hey, is there a place that we do think, you know, there could be sort of a reduced impact for the community. And there's also some activities that we have that I think that we can sort of look at too. Most notably, I think someone sort of acknowledged that at the end of the event, sometimes it takes a while for that location to be turned back over to Parks so they could utilize it. And one of the asks that the city has had for us is to put down a protective floor type that really, I don't know of any other jurisdiction that quite goes down that pathway, but that ask is something that we accommodate, but that accommodation actually probably adds another day or more on the back end for us to be able to turn that place around. And so it's something we could have more conversations about, but I could tell you that the Red Cross, Washington County, I know of no other jurisdiction that sort of takes that step. We're happy to take it because we've asked it, but it also comes with sort of a downside, which is the turning the location back over and clearing it out, because it takes a lot of time to pull that stuff back up once we put it down. So I hope those answer your questions. It's not a hard list, but I certainly part of the conversation about what the facility does though.
Thank you. I want to jump in and ask a question regarding, is there a potential for a hybrid model in which if there is a situation, let's use Charles Jordan, for instance, in which services can be, can continue at the park and recreation level while they're getting the necessary resources during a severe weather disaster, for instance. Why is it that one has to close for the other one to take over?
I'll give you my perspective, but I think it's actually probably also a question for sort of Parks and Rec. We don't have an issue in a place like Charles Jordan. You could potentially separate because there's multiple gyms. You might be able to sort of accommodate that. I don't know that a common entrance for everybody might work, but I think that's really up to the city if they think that they could support their mission. We're happy to walk through what our mission is. We also bring security. We also sort of block things off. And there are some locations that there are still some dual use. So it's not out of the question that we might be able to go down that pathway. If there's one caveat, the caveat is that when we're looking at a location, we're often taking probably the biggest room. Opening really small locations for us is somewhat problematic. So the 75-person location is hard. We're often trying to target the 150 or the 200, which at a Charles Jourdan is probably the large gym.
I guess just to clarify, I'm looking at potentials for collaboration. And if we look at the climate action plans in general that have come out, it's usually focused on infrastructure and not necessarily talking about human logistics and how that infrastructure is actually used to sustain human life or safety during these issues. And I'm wondering if there could be a broader or larger conversation about what that looks like, particularly as a person that found out that air conditioners usually can only cool down particular rooms like 20 degrees on what's outside. So if we have another heat dome event in which temperatures get to 115 or 110, that means indoor room temperatures for pretty much across Portland could be in the 90-degree level, which will cause all sorts of heat-related sicknesses that are going to probably overwhelm your system. And so how are we thinking about these collaborations or hybrid options between both county and city in which one vulnerable community doesn't get disrupted or displaced for another one coming in, especially if they're being bussed in from other areas?
We can certainly do that. And I do want to say the last time we used Charles Jourdan for the summer, we actually, noting that difference, we actually brought a mobile 10-ton air conditioning unit to make sure that we could maintain a viable temperature gradient for everybody that needed it. So yeah, when we mobilize, we do also sometimes come with supplies.
Thank you. There's a couple folks. So Todd, I saw that you.
Maybe the board membership.
Okay, and then Sabrina had, was there a layover question that you wanted to, because you opened up the space for other people to talk? And then we'll go to Suen.
Yeah, I think Dr. Corbin, you kind of asked a similar question. It was around like, why is there only one model? Because if at least anecdotally, you know, it's serving one group of community members, you know, and it sounds like there's a lot of good resources that exist at these shelters or DRCs, as you call them internally. That's kind of my question of why are we not looking at who is this serving? Who is this burdening? Can we expand what we consider a DRC so that more people can get access to these resources in these events? And that might take different models. Is there something that I just don't know because I'm not in your world of like why there can't be more than one model?
I'm not saying there can be only model. There could be more. I think right now with the staffing and the resources we have, certainly this what we call sort of congregate care model is one that it's probably the national standard, and it's probably what we utilize more so than anything else. But I could tell you we're always looking for sort of newer and innovative ways to sort of approach some of these problems as well. And a good example would be this. I think you know, Sabrina, after the heat dome, when we were looking at sort of who was coming in, you saw an entire air conditioning program started up after that we thought was also doing a better job at targeting the people that were at greatest risk. And by starting that program, the city had a component, the county had a component, the state was providing air conditioners for people lower income, so they wouldn't have to potentially go to locations. Here's a solution that reduces the risk, helps really the targeted group that I think that we were seeing the most injury, and also reduces the burden on a system that has you know, seen a lot of asks over the years.
Thank you. Suen, go ahead.
I try to make it quick. I know inter-bureau, inter-department, when they need to use each other's space, they pay rent. And we as parks, we have lots of aging facilities as well as humongous deferred maintenance to take care of. Do we actually get something to compensate for this facility that we've been generously offered to be used in these situations, and afterwards, who's paying for anything that is damaged or vandalized or whatever it is, broken? Do we have that kind of business kind of relationship with each other for this kind of arrangements?
So I will say this, we have not paid rent to the city. I think that this is a solution where we're all looking for a communal effort to sort of get there. That being said, the county has paid for damage. So I think it's rare, but there have been 1 or 2 instances where we've had to. I remember at one location, I think that there was an incident where there's some damage, and I believe that we paid for that damage. And that's the same agreement that we have with anybody else. So if you're a nonprofit organization that we utilize and there happens to be some damage, we're good for it.
Thank you so much. We have about 2 minutes left, and so unless there's any burning questions from the board, I would like to thank both Chris and Stacy for joining us and providing these answers to many of our questions. And it looks like Stacy has welcomed us to email any lingering questions forward. So as board members, if you have other questions that you would like to ask regarding this particular topic, please send it forward to me in the next week or so. I'll send it over to Stacy and hopefully we can get some answers back. Other than that, we are at time.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right, thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn unless there's anything else. All right, thank you for adjourning our meeting at 6:59. Thank you so much for.
Are we